The next question from our next user is, what is your position on citizens' Second Amendment rights to carry concealed firearms? We'll start with Jenny Wilson.
Well, in 1999, this issue was very much alive in the mayor's debate as it related to guns in churches and schools. And one of the candidates the candidate that I supported, Dave Jones, was very bold on this and was very much working towards encouraging the citizens to vote to prevent concealed weapons to be carried into churches and schools. I think the University of Utah should absolutely have the right to ban them. I think when we do give out concealed weapon permits in this community, we should require extensive training. I know that the other side would argue that those weapons are useful in situations where you may have a situation where somebody comes in who does not mean to do well with that weapon, and to have the weapon in the pocket of somebody or in the purse of somebody who can respond is a good thing. I would argue that that in itself creates as many or more problems, and it's absolutely critical that if we do continue to allow the large number of concealed weapons permits that we are currently allowing in this state, we should increase the level of training and, of course, background checks and those types of things. I think it's necessary to maintain a civil society.
Keith Christensen.
Thank you. My reading of the Constitution would suggest that the Second Amendment does not give us the right to carry concealed weapons. It does give us the right to bear arms. And we've gotten to a point in society where we confuse what the Second Amendment really does and what it doesn't do. Legislatively, we've been given the right to conceal weapons. And to the individual that submitted this question and to those who have supported it, I actually compliment you for the question. I think the intent of the question is good. It's something that we need to discuss. But the Second Amendment doesn't give us the right to conceal weapons. It gives us the right to bear arms. Now, like all other things in society, we are a society, and those rights must be reasonably exercised. It's my belief that there should be reasonable restraint on the places that one can carry a concealed weapon. I personally see no reason for concealed weapons in churches, on our university campuses, and places of that nature. So that's where I come down on it. Certainly I understand the right, and I understand the arguments in favor of concealed weapons and those against. I understand the arguments that they could be helpful in certain circumstances. And I understand the arguments that if you ban weapons, only bad guys have them. I wouldn't be an advocate for banning weapons, but I think a reasonable restraint on our rights as a society makes a lot of sense.
John Renteria.
I have no problem with people granted permission to carry a concealed weapon. As Keith has indicated, it's just more or less a regulation on our Second Amendment when we're talking about that issue. That is pretty polarized more recently because of a lot of the crime that we see from people carrying concealed weapons, from people who really shouldn't have it to begin with. So it really doesn't address those who do carry it, and having passed all the safeguards in terms of screening and all the regulatory things that we have in place to protect ourselves from people that shouldn't be. It's not really an issue to me. I have no problem with it, but as I need to share with some of the others, there's a place and a time, and I don't believe churches, schools, and places of that nature are appropriate for even people with a concealed permit to be carrying, unless they're a police officer, a safety official.
J.P. Hughes.
I took the course for the concealed weapon permit, and I've encouraged my wife and my family to do that. From the educational training that we received and from a lifetime of experience with guns in a small town, we were told, and I believe from what I learned, that there is no, the people that go to the course, register themselves and have a concealed weapon permit are not committing the crimes. And when you, in fact, there are none in Utah's history of any that we knew at that time. When you see Trolley Square disaster occur, and then within 4 minutes that problem's taken care of, and within 6 minutes that young man was dead shows to me that the police officer from Ogden saved the day. And so I don't think we can be too cavalier about being totally defenseless in this society. I don't like the idea and wouldn't support an idea to have concealed weapon permits in schools, government places. I don't like the idea of any kind of church idea where they have guns. So the people who take the time, pay their money, and take the permit, I think are reasonable people from what I learned.
And finally, Ralph Becker.
I come at this, I guess, from the perspective of someone who's been a law enforcement officer, someone who's gone through concealed weapons training and is a permit holder, and someone who, while very supportive of the basic rights to the Second Amendment, believes that the way our laws in Utah provide for concealed weapons and the lack of training we have, there's no requirement that someone even know how to shoot a gun to get a concealed weapons permit, is completely inadequate. Guns introduced into a situation are never a good idea for someone who is not well trained. That is how, more often than not, someone gets badly hurt or killed. It's incomprehensible to me that we allow concealed weapons in churches and schools and universities. Those should be sanctuaries from guns. It's inconceivable to me that someone can go out and purchase guns at shows without having to have a background check, which is the case in Utah today. While certainly we need to respect the rights under the Second Amendment, the community has rights of protection, and that protection comes from law enforcement, not from people with concealed weapons. So I think we need to really beef up our training. We need to beef up our enforcement for concealed weapons, and people's easy ability to be able to acquire weapons who have no business because of mental illness or felony convictions to own guns.